Welcome in to Daily Faceoff Live, your go-to source for everything hockey. Live every weekday at noon Eastern.
It's a playoff edition. It's a conference final edition of Daily Faceoff Live. It's also a Memorial Day 2024 edition. Thank you to all the brave men and women in the United States who have made the ultimate sacrifice. It's also Daily Faceoff Live, brought to you by Bet365. We're thrilled to welcome in Bet365 as our sports betting just in time for the 2024 playoffs. We'll be here with Bet365 to provide you all the news, analysis, lines, and betting options for the playoffs until one team is left standing in June. He's former NHL player, now current Daily Faceoff analyst and morning Cup of Hockey host, Colby Cohen. Colby, how's your Memorial Day weekend?
It was good, Frank. A lot of family time, a lot of unhealthy food, and we had a lot of nice weather up until today when it started raining all day. So I can't complain too much. How about you?
All good here in Edmonton, getting set for Game 3 as the conference final shifts to Alberta. But before we talk about the Western Conference, let's start with the East, because the New York Rangers stole Game 3 in Sunrise, Florida on Sunday afternoon. And Colby, when you take a look at how Game 3 unfolded, there's so much to unpack. What's your biggest takeaway from this win for the New York Rangers? Are you concerned at all about where the Panthers are at, or do you believe in the process that they showed throughout that game as the Rangers escape with the Game 3 win to take a 2-1 series lead?
Look, I think this is the matchup and the series that we all thought we would see. Two teams that are extremely close, two teams that are the best two teams in the East. I don't have a lot of concern for the Florida Panthers. I still feel good about them winning this series based on the fact that I thought they outplayed the New York Rangers for a majority of that hockey game. Now, I think the difference to me were the saves that Igor Shesterkin made in the third period. I know when a goaltender gives up 4, questions are asked. But when you really watch that third period and you really watch all the execution that Florida was able to have below the tops of the circles in the offensive zone, and I know they got 2 in the third, there was a perfect shot, and then there was sort of a bounce off of Barkov in front of the net on bad body positioning or blown coverage by Vinny Trocheck, whichever you want to go with. But at the end of the day, that game yesterday, Frank, wildly entertaining. It was physical. It was dramatic. There was question marks about, the Trouba hit. There was jam early in the building. We saw a highlight reel goal from Alexis Lafreniere. There was a lot of different things happening in that hockey game yesterday. But, man, Igor Shesterkin was the difference. At the end of the day, he is why the New York Rangers were able to pull ahead and get that overtime goal.
The art of the backhand as well. So many backhand goals being scored in that game. And you mentioned Lafreniere and the pretty goal that he scored. He's had a massive playoff for the Rangers, 12 points in 13 games. But I wanted to ask you quickly about the Trouba hit. Let's take a quick peek at it. Right call, wrong call? Should this have been a major? Should this have warranted some attention for a suspension?
No, I think they got it right. I really did. I didn't like the way it looked in real time. And as they showed us different camera angles, I truly don't believe that his elbow was square direct contact, principal point to the head. I thought Evan Rodriguez sold this a little bit, in my opinion. I think he felt where it was, and I think players are 100% conditioned to do that at this point. I know it looks bad when you slow it down and you look at Trouba's elbow, but I will remind people the game is not played in slow motion. So on any hit, you can slow it down and look frame by frame and find some point of every hit where you feel like a guy's either out of control, their elbows up, their shoulders to the face, whatever it may be. I think that the officials absolutely made the right call here with only a 2-minute penalty.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I would say you can tell that Trouba's trying to catch him, like meaning he knows he's beat and he's trying to get an arm out. And a lot of hits do actually begin with the arm out. I think there was definitely a fair or healthy amount of embellishment from Rodriguez that probably doesn't help. And in the end, I think this was warranting certainly a minor penalty, but I don't see it as anything more than that. And I understand the want or the push to try and crucify Trouba. He's a guy that's always sort of squarely on the line. And I don't really understand what everyone kept saying or referencing. Oh, this is the Marc Messier Leadership Award winner. What does that have to do with anything here? I'm not entirely understanding the reference.
I got to tell you, I don't know if it's just this year or I'm sure it's every year, but I've noticed it more this year. It seems like the contradictory from the two sides of both of these series, even going back, of every single hit. One side is ready to lock them up for 30 years. The other side says clean hit. There's no in between. It's the same thing with goaltender interference. It's so out of control, Frank. It really is, especially with these hits. Now, I don't know if we have time to get into the game-winning goal. Or do we? Are we showing?
No, let's. We're going to talk more about this series in a little bit coming up with Jon Goyens, and maybe you can ask or point out what you wanted to. Then let's flip to the West quickly. We'll keep moving, and we'll come back to the Eastern Conference Final. The Dallas Stars drew even in Game 2 in Dallas on Saturday night. Game 3 goes tonight in Edmonton here. And when you look at the Stars, they get the empty netter at the end. The Oilers were pushing, some poor communication on the goalie pull. But if you look at this from Edmonton's perspective, before we get to Dallas, was this a bit of a missed opportunity, a chance to, heading into the third period tied, a chance to go up 2-0 on the Dallas Stars and win both games in Big D to open up the series? Maybe they can survive doing that once, losing the first 2 games on home ice, but maybe not twice in the same playoffs. Was there a bit of that, or do you think this was full marks to the Stars for their third period?
So it's interesting. My initial thought when I watched that hockey game was that I thought the Edmonton Oilers deserved better. I thought they deserved a better fate in that game. I thought they did enough. I obviously didn't like the first goal by Stuart Skinner, but then I thought he was phenomenal the rest of the way. And then I dug in a little bit and I rewatched some stuff this morning just because this was a couple of days ago now. And a problem that I actually had with Edmonton in this game, and I would tell anybody watching who's going to disagree with me to go back and watch for yourself, is that when the Dallas Stars had very few shots on goal through the first period and then some, they only had 12 shots on goal, probably with, at the 15-minute mark of the second period, they had 12 shots on goal. 8 of those 12 shots on goal were grade A scoring chances. Of the first 5 shots on goal, which is basically all they had in the first period, 4 of those, not counting the goal, were grade A scoring chances. They were not getting a ton of sustain, but when they were getting into the offensive zone, Edmonton was leaky defensively. They were giving up, prime opportunities. Tyler Seguin had one on the front.
Lots of opportunities on the rush, too.
It just, to me, I felt like when I rewatched, I thought Dallas could have easily, on 4 or 5 shots in the first period, could have walked away with 3 or 4 goals. So I actually am going to go ahead and say that I thought Stuart Skinner was brilliant in this game, and I hated the first goal, but he was absolutely brilliant in this game. And I did think the more I looked at it and the more I analyzed it, that Dallas did deserve to win this hockey game. Even though at times Edmonton had them on their heels, Edmonton made them look slow. And I do think no Roope Hintz is making a huge difference for the Dallas Stars. How could it not? He's your number one center.
Yeah, so as this series shifts to oil country for game 3, sometimes when you get a 1-1 series, you feel like one team has the advantage. Adam Henrique draws back into the lineup for Edmonton tonight. We'll see what happens with the Dallas Stars morning skate. I have a sneaking suspicion that Roope Hintz will be back also for Dallas, which would be a pretty significant advantage for them to be able to go back to having 2 first lines. But when you look at the way the first 2 games unfolded, now that you had a chance to rewatch, even though the series is tied, does any team have an edge through the first 2 games?
Look, I still give the edge to the Dallas Stars. I just do. I picked them to win this series. I'm staying with that pick. I've said it on this show, what my head and my heart are in different places on this whole thing. But I think the Dallas Stars are a team that has shown us they're comfortable coming from behind. They did it in round 1, down 2. They did it in round 2, down 1. And they seem to be a team that gets better throughout a series. Now, I don't know what Stuart Skinner is going to give us night in and night out. He's had a good little stretch here, but he also lets in a soft goal. Soft goals are very hard to overcome. Even though he stood on his head, the rest of that hockey game probably had 12 or 13 grade A scoring chances. So I'm looking at Jake Ottinger. I'm thinking he's really getting into the series. He was phenomenal in that last game. He made a ton of 10-bellers as well. So I do go ahead and continue to give the Dallas Stars the edge in this series.
Have we given enough love to, not to Roope Hintz? He hasn't played. Have we given enough love to Miro Heiskanen?
Probably not. I don't think we ever give enough love to Miro Heiskanen. And where I don't think Tanev has been as good in this series as he was in previous, I think the puck moving, the way that Heiskanen, stands up, you watch him defend a rush. You watch how many plays that he breaks up because his skating is so good and his lateral ability to close guys off is so good. It's not physical, but it's just smooth and it's efficient. And it really helps the Dallas Stars not get hemmed defensively when he's on the ice. They're always in the offensive zone because of his skating ability and his defensive level IQ.
All right, let's move on to our off-season look ahead. The New York Islanders were another one of the teams that was eliminated in round 1, making a playoff appearance in Patrick Roy's first, half season behind the bench. He came in on January 21st. Look, we're in full off-season mode, even though there's 4 teams left standing and vying for a chance at Lord Stanley. We had our top 75 free agents go up last week. This week, we're going to have our first trade targets board. But when you look at New York, Colby, what is their biggest need heading into the offseason?
Well, to me, their biggest need is a new general manager. And I know that that's not going to happen because they came out and said so. I looked at their cap friendly. I looked at their what they have. They've got 17 players signed out of 23. They've got $6 million in cap space. And I got to tell you something, Frank, they don't have a single forward under contract under the age of 26. This is a team that continuously looks slow. They continuously look one-dimensional. You've got either Horvat and Barzal together, and then you only have one line that produces, or you split them up. Nobody produces. This isn't a team that has youth. This isn't a team that has a ton of speed. You watch them, they struggle to generate and sustain offensive zone pressure. Yeah, they're good in goal, right? And then you look at their back end, Pelech, Pulock, Dobson, Romanoff. What are you going to get out of Pelech and Pulock? Those guys are starting to age. They're 29 years old. They dropped off in their play this past season. Noah Dobson seems to be on the rise. Frank, I got to tell you something. I don't have one thing for you here. To me, this roster is in big trouble. This organization is in big trouble. They truly remind me of what the Flyers have looked like in Philadelphia for a very long time. Mediocre, a team that can't get into the playoffs. If they do, they're one and done. I don't see a ton of direction coming from the organization, and I see a lot of stubbornness from Lou Lamoriello. I have no idea what the Islanders do to pull themselves out of this no man's land middling funk that I see their roster in.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And I think the other thing that I look at is outside of Matt Barzal and Noah Dobson and Sorokin, who are their other difference makers? Like, who are their guys that are really elite level talent that can take you to the next level? And even among those players, Barzal and Dobson, and probably even Sorokin, they're not in the McDavid, Draisaitl, Pasternak.
They're good players.
They're
good
all players,
stars,
but they're
not elite.
No, they're all stars, but they're the second tier of all stars, if
Exactly.
that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
So they did make a pick swap on Friday, which is so rare to see a trade materialize a month before the draft with the Chicago Blackhawks. They traded down 2 spots. The Blackhawks trade up a little bit. And in return, the New York Islanders get an extra pick. And I'd be curious to see, just looking at Lou Lamoriello's playbook last year, he traded Josh Bailey and needed to include a second-round pick in order to move him. Does he use one of those extra picks this time around to try and move off of, I'd pick a guy on the roster. My guy would be JG Pageau, 33 points, 11 goals last year as a center. He has 2 years left at $6 million. You're going to have to include some sweeteners in order to be able to create some cap flexibility. As we looked at their players that are pending restricted and unrestricted free agents, you've got 17 players signed and only $6 million in cap space. If you have any hope or prayer of doing anything meaningful this summer, it's going to be to try and find a new way to create cap space. And in this case, that would include probably moving off of a piece. But as you mentioned, probably pretty stubborn. I'm pretty curious to see what kind of impact Patrick Waugh and his thought process or influence will have in the changes that are made to the New York Islanders this summer. Let's talk more Eastern Conference Final. Let's bring in Jon Goyens for this week's edition, the first edition of the Coaches Room. That's right. This is the Coaches Room, and he is Jon Goyens, 2-time QMJHL head coach, and he's back with another edition of the Coaches Room. And let's talk, you're a power play specialist, Jon. Let's talk New York Rangers power play, the second highest ranked among the teams remaining at 25.6%. However, since the third game of round 2 against Carolina and through the first 3 games of this conference final against Florida, they've gone 1 for 18, 0 for 8 this round. Is this the aggressive work of a penalty kill, or do the Rangers find a way? How can they find a way to break through?
Well, they want to hold pucks on so much, right? They're a possession type of power play. They do have movement, but you know, if I compare them to like a Tampa Bay who underhandle pucks, they will overhandle, but with a purpose. They're looking for seam passes, and we'll see some examples in a second where they look for Zibanejad on that seam pass, not just your typical flank 1T. He'll be down by the goal line below bottom circle. And right now they face basically 2 PKs that are very similar. You'll see Carolina's D up high, pressing high. Well, you'll see Florida's PK pressing high. And what do they want to do? They want you to continuously make indirect plays, stay on the perimeter. So then it's a one goes, everybody goes. So as we jump into these clips, I will highlight that I think New York is, if they are a little bit sharper on the execution, chances are coming their way. And you see here, Ekblad up top, very similar. We'd see Burns up there up top. So what are they doing? He jumps, forces an indirect play, forces them to the perimeter, and watch this entire sequence. There's going to be 9 perimeter passes until Panarin can wheel around the net and take kind of a Hope fadeaway shot like you would in basketball. Here, 4 guys up high by New York, so 3 guys up high by Florida. Florida identifies. So again, you want to go indirect. They're jumping, loose puck, and it's gone. They will even force you to play a little bit of pitch and catch along the top, and it's risky business. It's risky business to continuously make these high passes with great sticks by Florida. So the quicker they can be, they need to get rid of this high pocket guy, release them, because when they go 3 high on the PK, you got to be ready to go indirect or bypass and create low 2-on-1s. Now watch Mr. Panarin here, the bread man, hide and go seek off a face-off play. And look, Kreider's already ready to turn his hips and be ready for this one-touch play. And we'll see this kind of develop where they want to create these 2-on-1s. PP2, simplify it. You don't need to go east-west and then back east-west. You got to go north. It was available for you. That right circle is, or excuse me, left circle is open. Watch again. Panarin, he's going to fade out of coverage, and he's unchecked now. I think he should find his way above this defender or below to create confusion because, again, look at that space. So if they front Zibanejad for a 1T, he could just throw it into a pocket of space. Over-aggressive on an entry, elite seam passes. Zibanejad's got to be a little bit higher, and we'll see another example of that in a second. When they do rush back to get into their defensive posture, they will be a little bit ugly. And look again, opening up that weak side goal line. If Zibanejad doesn't drift and he gets in that spot, it's under the bar because that's what he gets paid millions of dollars to do.
Yeah, John, the other thing I noticed on the power play when they're struggling, the puck's along the yellow way too much. When you have skilled players like the New York Rangers do, that puck should never be on the yellow once the release happens and things settle down. So thinking a little bit of 5-on-5 here now, John, the New York Rangers had 37 blocked shots last game. And I think Paul Maurice talked about that in his post-game press conferences. He felt like they left a lot of offense on the shins of the New York Rangers. So is this just a case of commitment level, or did the New York Rangers change the way that they're defending or recommit to the way that they're defending to really squander a lot of these offensive threats?
Well, I'll celebrate the fact that apparently Netflix is coming out with Happy Gilmore #2. They're in Florida. There must be batting cages everywhere, and they must have gone out on their day off and taken a few balls right off the chest in the batting cage, just like Happy Gilmore. It's 364 more days till training camp because these guys were committed to block with their bodies, but it was also how elite they were with great defensive sticks, elite sticks. So I'm actually going to show 5-on-5 plays where they have elite sticks and willing to block, but on the penalty killing, they actually blocked 9 shots or forced a ton of misses. So why don't we fire up the clips and we'll see the 5-on-5 clips start up right away. You want to go east-west, it takes elite sticks. You can't just match body for body. Lindgren was there with his stick and his body all night. Off a post, Miller doesn't spin and get that stick on blade. It's a wide open net for Varhege. Goes behind the net, right here, poke, boom. Lindgren right in the chest like Happy Gilmore. And look at him. His partner's right there. Boom, they get it out. Now we go to the PK. They're forcing pocket pass. Adam Fox, he went to Harvard for a reason. Boom, smart enough to have his stick in a lane. Doesn't necessarily have to take that shot off the body. Again, watch the desperation, urgency for Trouba to get back in that lane and sell out to block that shot. Again, you want to get to the pocket, elite shooter in Barkov. Well, they went out and got Goodrow, and he's paying off on both sides of the ledger. Now, again, watch this read by Trouba. He's so far out of the lane, and he reads it early. He's aware, and there's no surprises. So they're forcing guys to miss, but they're getting in those lanes. They're willing to lay down. And look at Lindgren. We've seen this year in, year out from him in the playoffs, just limping around, and probably a really popular guy for the commitment that he has. And then right to the very end, again, Goodrow, square, gets it off the ankles and up in the screen. So when you got guys committing to that level of blocking shots, but also with having great sticks, you could really, really start alleviating the pressure offensively.
Yeah, John. And the last thing I wanted to ask you about before we let you go is I want to talk with you about the overtime winner. And you know, Capo Caco gets healthy scratched the previous game, and you never know how a guy's going to react to that situation. You've had to be the one making those types of decisions. There was a lot of conversation. You know, Hedl hasn't played in 8 months, and all of a sudden they got a red carpet kind of rolled out to him for the first line. Now, what I want to talk to you about on this goal, if we can tee up this clip and see if you and I are seeing this the same way, is actually the work that Caco does. It got cut off a little bit in that on that clip, but you know, we talk all the time about faceoffs not just being a stat for the centerman. And correct me if I'm wrong here, John. Kakko does a lot of the work there, no?
He continues to go in, and they have one guy going behind their centerman, one behind their own centerman, right? And so you got a guy hunting on either side of where that puck can flare out. And teams are now looking into those analytics. Where do pucks flare out? So they have one above, and he continues on the hunt. After that, I know Paul Maurice and his staff are not going to be happy how they defended. Yeah. Rodriguez loses his guy. Ekman Larson leaves the inside dots for absolutely no reason. And you got 4 red jerseys, dot line or outside on this play. Makes absolutely no sense. But give Kakko and the flanks on the faceoff. The winger's job is never done. Just once that puck is dropped, you got to get in there and you got to dig away. And without that dig by Kakko, we're talking about a continuation in this overtime and potentially a 2-2 series.
He beats Bennett off the hash, and then he beats Kulikov on the bottom side. I mean, those are 2 big players that he continues to battle through. I thought Roslovic was a little bit hesitant to jump in. I know he gets an assist too, but I wanted to give Kakko a little bit of love because nobody's gotten dragged harder than him through this run. And I think that's a big-time play that I don't hear anybody talking about on that game-winning goal.
Still not entirely sure what exactly Ekman Larson is doing on that sequence, but you guys did hit on that already. This was another fantastic edition of the Coach's Room. We'll be back with Jon Goyens later this week to talk Western Conference Final. Thanks, John.
Have a good one.
All right, Colb, time for our hashtag AskDFO inbox question of the day, which is brought to you by Douglas Mattresses. You can get yours today at douglas.ca/DFO. Douglas Mattresses are handcrafted in Canada, ensuring the highest quality materials and fastest delivery to you. So it's the party is probably still going on in Prague, even in these daylight hours in Europe. Doesn't matter. That never stopped anyone in Prague. You see the celebration here as they celebrate their gold medal at the World Championships. David Pastrnak playing the hero. My question for you is, of the teams playing in the 4 nations face-off, so it was Czechia over Switzerland in the gold medal game. So the 4 nations face-off goes in February. It's US, Canada, Sweden, Finland. So if all the other teams left out, which one has the right to be the most upset by that choice?
Well, look, I think the Czechs would be the obvious answer here. I mean, I do think not having Russia in any international event means it's not best on best. And again, you think what you want about the political situation of what's happening over, in that part of the world, but you don't have team Russia or Olympic athletes of Russia, whatever you want to call them, like they've been. And then you don't have the Czechs. I think the Czechs just showed everybody that they're a real player here. And I know the U.S. traditionally doesn't do very well in that tournament, but I think you could make a pretty good argument for either of those two. And that's why it's going to be great, but it's not truly best on best.
Yeah, disappointing finish for Canada in this tournament. I don't know. I think there's lots of different arguments to make. It's the Czechs, but also what about Roman Josi and the Swiss? What about Leon Draisaitl and the Germans? There's lots of interesting choices that you could make, but after that gold medal, certainly would be well justified in that. And you know what? I'm also fine with it. You have to make tough decisions. This is a shortened period of time. It's supposed to be a normal all-star break. So you got 1 week. You're not shutting down your season for 3 weeks to play a mid-season tournament. And sometimes without Russia, which I think their NHL is totally justified in, by the way, you've got to make tough choices. And so this is what they ended up doing. That brings us to our daily bets today, which is brought to you by Bet365, the largest sports betting platform globally. Open an account with Bet365 today and use promo code DAILY365. You can see that at the top of your screen to bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I got 3 plays for you today. One of them is an Evan Bouchard anytime goal scorer plus 375. So a $100 bet would net you $375. I've also got a Leon Draisaitl 1 power play point In fact, you could probably kill both those things on the same sequence if you time it right. A Bouch bomb on the power play with a dish from Draisaitl, that would hit both of those, and then you can couple that with something a little bit different. And I'm just monitoring the odds. Florida Panthers lose Game 3 on home ice, plus 375 now to win the Stanley Cup. Everyone else, the Oilers, Stars, and Rangers, all even at plus 240. Maybe a value play if you can get a series price on the Panthers as well. Obviously, the Rangers being up 2-1, the odds will be in your favor right now if you are a believer in the Florida Panthers, which Colby and I touched on at the beginning of the show. Process seemingly more important right now than scoreboard. That brings us to garbage time, which is brought to you by Wendy's. Wendy's only ever uses fresh Canadian beef that's never seen the inside of the freezer. Whether you order a Baconator Dave single or a JBC, you'll only ever find real fresh beef that's real juicy and loaded with fresh toppings. So download the Wendy's app, check out the latest deals, and order a burger that's only job is being delicious. Colby, some sad news over the weekend. PGA Tour player Grayson Murray, his family announced on Sunday he committed suicide, and there is a connection to the hockey world. Grayson Murray, huge Carolina Hurricanes fan, a Raleigh native. And Gav, if you go full screen here, there was a note that was left by the family of Grayson Murray. They asked all players playing in the tournament to wear pins of red or black because he was such a big Carolina Hurricanes fan. And you can see multiple PGA Tour players and caddies all wearing the pins. Small little connection to the hockey world, but I think, all of our hearts break whenever you see news like that. An active PGA Tour player committing suicide, played in the tournament, withdrew from the final 2 holes on Friday, obviously struggling with mental illness. And so certainly a tough weekend around the sports world. Colb, that'll do it for today's edition of Daily Faceoff Live. We'll be back 12 noon Eastern on Tuesday to talk Oilers Stars Game 3 from here in Edmonton. Can't wait to see what it's like in the building as the Edmonton Oilers try to add to their high watermark for wins in the Connor McDavid era in a playoff run. They're seeking their 10th win tonight. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you then.
Thanks for tuning in to Daily Faceoff Live. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.